context that those verses were addressing. And therefore, I make the argument often to Muslims that you can never really make sense of the Quran without understanding the holistic, full story of the Prophet. The Prophet as a father, the Prophet as a cousin, the Prophet as a judge, the Prophet as a businessman, the Prophet as a ruler of a community, the Prophet as a husband, the Prophet as a human being. Because he was what? A human being. And those verses were addressing all of those different aspects and facets of the Prophet's life. Trying to make an interpretation of the Quran without that context will hurt the Quran itself. And therefore, make us make judgments of the Quran that are not real. Give a specific example of what I mean, that this theory will come to reality. I know, it's a lot of theory here. So it's a verse in the Quran that says, يشترون لهو الحديث. يشترون لهو الحديث. Who here does not know Arabic? Who here does not know Arabic? Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, this is one of the dilemmas that I have to deal with here. But you have this verse in the Quran. يشترون لهو الحديث. Yashtarun means to purchase or pay for something you buy. Lahwa means distraction. Hadith, talking. It's not referring to hadith of the Prophet here, just the very idea of talking. If you take this verse literally, the Quran seems to be condemning people who distract people from listening or doing something by some kind of talking. Listen to me carefully. Sisters and brothers, men and women, Muslims and non-Muslims. Now, those who have read this verse without the context said, listen to me carefully, this verse refers to why music is haram, is prohibited in Islam. Listening to music takes you to hell. It's sinful. Their argument was, the Quran says, if you distract people from God, you are sinful. And the music distracts you from God. Well, if you take that sentence as such, without the context and what happened before and after it within that chapter, it could make sense. Let me tell you this now. This verse was revealed in Mecca, not in Medina. What does this mean for Muslims? None of the Meccan verses, none addresses what is halal and what is haram, what is kosher and unkosher, what is acceptable or not acceptable. All Meccan verses spoke of theology and the creed. Aqidah. Okay? So this is not a verse that even is trying to tell you what to do, what not to do about anything. It's not about the music, therefore. Because the issue of music would be an issue of ruling, and only Medinan verses spoke about what is halal, what is haram, what is allowed, what is not allowed. Meccan verses did not address those issues in any way, shape, and form. And therefore, this is a aqidah, it's a creed verse, not a ruling verse. Very simple. So when you know when that verse was revealed, will help you. It was revealed in Mecca, not Medina. And therefore, you cannot use it to say music is haram. Maybe there is something else that says music is haram, is not acceptable. Maybe there is none. I'm not talking about that. But you cannot use this verse because it was revealed in Medina, in Mecca, not in Medina. And many Muslims do that, by the way. They read these verses without the context and make rulings out of them and make our lives hell. I'm telling the truth because they don't know. And go online, look at this verse. It is used by every Muslim scholar to say music is haram. And it does not take more than 5 minutes to tell someone, wait a minute, this is a Meccan verse. It's not talking about fiqh, about jurisprudence, about law. It's not. It's not addressing it. So what happened with this story? The Prophet, peace be with him, used to, in the city of Mecca, sit next to the Kaaba, the sacred house of Mecca, inviting the visitors to listen to what? To the Quran, to the words of God. He had a beautiful voice, people loved it, people became Muslims. Who did not like that reality? Quraysh, Mecca. Muhammad is distracting our people from us. So what happened? The rich elite of Mecca literally yashtari, paid people saying, you have a beautiful voice in poetry, we pay you money, go and stand next to Muhammad, read poetry loud, that people are distracted by your voice from listening to the Quran. So the verse is not talking about music in any way, shape, and form. It's talking about the specific historical reality where the elite of Mecca were distracting people from listening to God's word. You see now where it comes into. So the study of the seerah becomes important. And it becomes important to understand what that ayah really means. And you tell these guys who say music is haram, wait a minute. You cannot use this verse to say music is haram. Or is haram means not allowed, prohibited. You see where I'm coming from? And Muslims do that all the time. They use words in the Quran and Hadith, Muslims and non-Muslims, without understanding the context. You want to say something? No. Yeah. Any question? Any question? Any question? No. Good. So this is why we need to understand all of those things. Not only understand the hadiths of the Prophet without the context. Give you another example. You see Muslims around walking, Muslim men, with their garments, looks like the Arab dress. You know, it's like raised up to here. Have you seen that in some countries? Or, when some people pray in some cultures, they do exactly this. They fold their pants up. Because the Prophet said, in an authentic hadith, anything that is beyond the ankle is in hellfire. And he did say that, and it's authentic. When you study all of these things, who narrated what, who said what, he did say it. We know exactly where and how. But that's only a sentence from a story. A story. What's the story? The story will make you understand exactly the opposite. The story was this. The Prophet, peace be with him, was giving a talk in the mosque. And a Bedouin Arab man walked in with his abaya, you know, this Arab abaya, the Saudi thing, you know, that, you know, is what do you call it, all the way on the floor, you know, behind you. And the man walked like this. And he sat down. The Prophet had a beautiful habit of not pointing to people saying, you are bad. He had this a way of talking in general. And if you have that bad habit, you will know he means you, but he did not want to embarrass you in front of everyone. You know that from his habit. He never really pointed to people directly. And in this case, he mentioned this sentence. He said, anything that is beyond the ankle is in hellfire. So this man understood that he was meant by it. He ran out to cut his garment shorter, or to keep it, but walk in with humility. listen to the story now. Abu Bakr, his first disciple, the first convert to Islam, said, "Oh Muhammad, I am the first one to have followed you. I have been with you from day one. I traveled with you from Mecca to Medina, and here I am in Medina, and look at my garment, it's beyond the ankle. You never told me I'm going to hellfire." It makes sense. You said if it's beyond, you go to hell. God will punish you, basically. But look at it, and I am always with you, day and night, and why didn't you tell me this? Muhammad smiled and said, as he usually also does, he said, no, you are missing me, Abu Bakr. Eat what you want, dress what you want, as long as you don't do it with excessiveness and arrogance. So the hadith is not about the length of the dress. He's not talking about whether it should be less or more. He used this, what do you call it, this metaphoric way of talking to tell that person you are acting with arrogance. It is problematic for some people who take that sentence and not the whole story. So you have people running around in the Muslim community saying, well, you have to do it. And if you don't, you're going to hellfire. So, brothers, sisters, don't misunderstand the statement of the Prophet. He's not saying that you have to have 1 inch beyond or 1 inch more or less or higher. He's not talking about this. The Prophet's not crazy to waste your time on these things. His focus is, don't be arrogant about whatever thing you have. How do you mix into that sentence? There's a very well-known book of hadith in the Muslim community called Riyadh al-Salihin. I'm sure every Muslim knows it here. It's a 2-volume book, almost in every masjid. It's a collection of hadiths or the Prophet's statements about all kinds of things. And basically these are statements the Prophet said, but not with the whole context, not with the seerah. So imagine if someone reads that sentence, Brother Yahya, astaghfirullah al-azim. May God forgive you your sin. Look at your thought. It's too long, and you are going to hellfire because the Prophet says, and here it is, look at the book. And yeah, you're right, the Prophet did say this, but can we take the whole story? You see where I'm coming from? This is where you have a lot of abuses of hadith literature by Muslims and non-Muslims alike about what the Prophet said or did not say, may mean or not mean. We'll stop maybe in 5 minutes. Or when is the last year? 2 o'clock. Okay, then we're okay. Staying on that number 7, I think. You said number 7. Yeah, number 7. Not every time you see the word sunnah, you are referring to what the Prophet's precedent was. The word sunnah in our Islamic literature sometimes refers to an act that is not mandatory, but you will be rewarded for doing. Okay? So it's not referring to anything related to what the Prophet did or did not do. So they say, like, I'm going to do my 2 sunnahs of, before salah or after salah. Or is it sunnah to do put my hands like this, or my hands like this, or my hands like this when I pray? This is a fiqhi term, refers to something that is not mandatory in the acts of worship. And people again mix between that and the word sunnah, referring to the precedent or the acts of the Prophet ﷺ or his way of thinking. Are you with me there? Good. Now, ilm mustalah al-hadith, the science for the study of hadith, is the study of all data related to isnad. Isnad means the chain of narrators, exactly like this. If you look carefully here, you have the Prophet here, okay, in light green. Then you have the companions in yellow who heard the Prophet directly, okay. Then you have what's called tabi'in, those who have followed the era of the companions, or people who have not met the Prophet, have not heard directly from the Prophet. Then you have the next generation called tabi'in, those who have followed the followers of the disciples of the Prophet, all the way till you end up with those who have actually put these hadiths in books, like Imam Bukhari or others. Now, this is called isnad, the study of isnad. When you study isnad, you study exactly this: who met whom, where, when, and how. Number two, you study whether this person actually met this person or not. For example, if you study here, like here we have Asim, someone with the name of Asim here. Asim, according to this chain, met with Muhammad, met with Ibn Ammar, met with the Prophet. Some people say, wait a minute. Asim died in the year 103. And he became a Muslim in Damascus. Well, we know that this Muhammad, one of the companions, never got to Damascus. What's going on here? In the Islamic tradition, there